thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Easton Park Talk. I'm here with Tanner O'Brien, which is very exciting. The first podcast I ever did was with you many years ago. Was that, how many years ago do you think that was?
God, it had to at least a year and a half, probably pushing 2 years at this point. Pretty close.
It was a while ago. It was fun. I was so nervous, but you made it really easy. And I think a lot of what I think about you a lot when we're doing these, because it was just so cool to sit and chat and talk about business and all the things. So now we get to ask you a bunch of questions. And I have a surprise for you at the end because I owe you something. I don't know if you remember from our podcast, but so think about that in the back of your mind for a little bit. So why don't you tell us about you and what you do and what Action Coach is?
Yeah, no, I appreciate being here. It's always fun to kind of flip the script, be on the other side, and So Tanner O'Brien, I'm one of the senior partners here at Action Coach in Central Texas. It's a family business, so I'm in it with both my parents. So if anyone's ever wondering what it's like to be in business with family, I can tell you all the ups and downs and everything else that comes along with it. So we're a business coaching company. We're a franchise of a global enterprise that's in 84 countries, I believe, at this point.
Okay.
Been around for 30 years. We've had our firm for, I've been in since 2020. My dad originally bought the license back in 2011. So I've been around it for a really long time. Yeah. Really just working with business owners, entrepreneurs, that sort of thing, and helping them get to that next level. Okay. That can be defined a little bit differently depending on where you're at in the business journey. That's the short version of kind of what Action Coach is and that sort of thing.
Very cool. And so what got you, is it like leadership training, business training? Like, give me a little more meat to that.
Yeah. So, yes to all of it.
Okay.
When we talk about business, we talk about what is the business asset. So the definition that we use for business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. Something that one day you could exit if you want to. Now, that doesn't mean you have to, right? Mm-hmm. But we want to know that we're creating an entity that allows the owner to be able to take some time off to have that quote unquote legacy where they can either pass it down, sell it, whatever they want to do. They have the choice, right? That's kind of the purpose. So because of that, there's a lot of different components that come along with it. Now, at its core foundation, it's going to be what's the structure to build that entity. So we start, again, depending on where you're at in the business journey, there's some people that are further along. We need to start focus on team building and leadership and some things like that, but always bring it back down to the core. What is the foundation of what makes a really good business? And it's, business planning. Where are we headed? How do we actually structure a plan that can be managed by activity and go through that entire process? That's a big component of what we do. That leads us then into time management, financial management, marketing and sales. Then we start building out systems and creating leverage or efficiency in a business, which then leads us into team and eventually can put in that general manager, have that synergy or that scale point where you can duplicate, you can exit, you can kind of do what you want at that point. So it's really kind of this framework that we walk through, and depending on where we're at in that business journey, we'll kind of determine which components do we spend more time on. Yeah,
that's fascinating. And as you're talking, I'm like, we should probably talk to you because it's so hard, right? Like, and I think the big key that you just said is like, is it something that you can take time off from? And we were just joking that I'm going to try really hard not to work over the Thanksgiving holiday. And we both kind of like laughed, like, what a silly thought that, wouldn't that be nice? And that's kind of where we are in the business, is that it's still very much, we're running it. It's, and I would imagine too, that you guys help with it. It's a bit of a control. I think most entrepreneurs have a really hard time letting go. I know that I certainly do. And it's, there's just so much to what you just said. And it reminds me a little bit of EOS training. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's a phenomenal program. Okay. So kind of the way I look at like EOS as an example of, and there's a ton of different programs, Action Coach is one thing that's out there. But EOS is like really good at one component within systems and planning and some things like that. So the way I like to look at Action Coach in comparison to something like EOS is really their framework fits kind of within certain pieces of what we do. We've got a much broader scope of work that we'll do.
Right.
So that can be a really, really good fit for some entrepreneurs out there. And I've seen, phenomenal implementers and all that kind of stuff of that program. And in other cases I've seen it's just not enough. It's enough to kind of get that piece going, but not work on the other aspects of the business. So I've got a lot of respect for EOS and what they built. Yeah,
I had the opportunity to go through EOS training for a couple of years with before we kind of jumped into this full time, and it was a big reason that we did kind of take the leap for this, and it was really great. They're good at like the L10, like the leadership meetings and identify, discuss, solve. Like it's all there, but it did sometimes feel like it was like almost enough. But then there's the other side, like you were talking about, like the financial piece and the marketing piece and the sales piece that just, it touches on it, but it doesn't really go into it. It's really more like the systematic, how things fit together and the team and things like that. So you guys are helping really on like a business side, but also like a psychological side of the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I will never sit here and say, we're life coaches, we're the best at the mindset piece, but it's a component that we have to address, right? And sometimes we have to outsource and bring in some other folks that are really focused on kind of the mindset piece of an entrepreneur. But if you think about building a business, the business will only ever grow to the level of the entrepreneur or the business owner, right? So if you don't grow as the owner, the business really can't grow. There's always going to be kind of that ceiling with it. So and that's going to, there's a lot more emotion when it comes to people than it does the system or the asset of a business.
Right.
So working kind of through those two things hand in hand is really important. So 100%. It's an area that we spend some time working through.
Yeah.
Just because it's a component of, if we're going to be building something amazing and great, we got to work on the humans that are involved with that.
Right. They need to be happy and feeling, and not just the leader, but like the team. It's such a trickle down. One of the biggest lessons I've learned so far, it was last year, like October to December of last year was probably the most stressed I've ever been in my life, and specifically like professionally, and our team felt it. And Steve, my husband, who we can chat about working with family, because my husband and I are full-time in the business together. It's probably a different dynamic than you with your folks, but like he was like, hey, you need to simmer, because like the team was feeling it, and it's just so amazing like how one person can really like lift up or put down a group of people. And since then I've been very cognizant of like why was the mindset that bad, why was I that stressed? And it's like, it's hard though, the responsibilities of leading a team and making sure that your clients are happy and all the things that go with it. It's huge. It's a big deal. And even as small, I mean, we're tiny, like we're a team of 5, but even then we're supporting, we're in human resources. We're supporting at this time over 1,000 employees, and with 5 people. Like it's a lot, it never ends. The train never stops. And the things that we deal with personally, like it's heavy. We're dealing with like sexual harassment and discrimination and all kinds of really heavy stuff that at the end of the day, you're like, oof, like it's stressful, but it's the job of the leader to elevate, not to pick up. And it's I think we're constantly evolving. It's hard.
Yes. Yeah. The understanding kind of that emotional component of it, and what are the things that are going to help kind of, I don't want to say compartmentalize, but be able to kind of push it off and make sure that you still can run, your business the way that you need to, and run your family the way that you need to, and different things like that.
Yeah. And your friendships and your activities outside of work. And it's, you kind of flock to people who are like-minded. And so we've found ourselves spending a lot of time with other entrepreneurs, and it's a group of people, you get it, there's a level of understanding, there's a level of like the grind and the fear and the pain, and then the joy, a lot of joy that comes with it. But we talked about this when you and I chatted last, was like positivity and surrounding yourself with like positive people. It's powerful. You have to. Yeah,
especially in the entrepreneurial world. I mean, kind of like you alluded to right there, right? The being in business is almost one of the loneliest things you can do.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple folks that I'm coaching right now, and we go through the same conversations. They start walking through different things, and their learning level goes up so fast.
Yeah.
On here's the challenges, or here's the things that I need to solve, and here's how I need to look at different things. And I can't go talk to my friends about it because they just don't get it. Like I
Right.
have to get around other business owners, other entrepreneurs that understand these same types of problems, because there is that not everybody gets it. You know?
Yeah. And I think you just, something you just said about like your learning capacity goes up and becomes very quick. It's, for us, it's like the answer is yes. What's the question? We're going to figure it out. We're going to have a level of like problem solving, but it's quick. It has to be, and you have to move fast. And it's kind of fascinating when you do get around a group of other entrepreneurs that speed does pick up when you're like gaining on their, things that they've solved or things that they've gone through, whether it's in their industry or just being a business owner as a whole. It's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can look at this in so many different ways, and being in, family business, right? Even internally, it's really important to kind of be aware of how fast that learning process is happening. Because if you're out learning everybody around you, it can be very difficult because you can start creating that massive gap.
Right.
I can speak to a couple different times throughout our journey, specifically between like my dad and I, we had been in business since 2020. And there's been periods of time when, my learning trajectory moved a little bit faster and we started kind of have a gap. We had to kind of catch up again. But there's a lot of those pieces that really matter, and finding the right group of people that can help you accelerate that learning. Because in business we get to test so many different things that we don't necessarily get to do as employees.
Right.
So that feedback loop is so fast that we can start to learn things faster than a lot of folks out there.
Yeah. Out of necessity. Like it's fascinating. We Steve and I both work in the business full time. We're proud to say that we're both salaried employees of the business, which was much different than when you and I spoke last. So that's a good thing. But then what happens is, our employees work from home. It just makes sense when we need to be on site. We go to our clients' offices. So we work from home. So, we have to be really intentional about getting out and networking and being with people. And we kind of went through this, it's always busy. There's always excuses. There's always something going on. Oh, we're tired, or, you worked a lot, or what have you. But it was probably a couple months ago. There's a place called The Tavern. It's like near West Campus. It's a real seedy old bar. And I've been going with a mentor and friend of mine. We've met there for probably like the last 10 years, maybe once a quarter, maybe sometimes twice a quarter. He's an entrepreneur. He's excellent. And we met another client over there and another good friend of ours who's very entrepreneurial. And we sat and talked about like healthcare and challenging things that we go through with our teams and all these things, and it was just, we left that meeting and we're so jazzed. Like, we've got to keep doing this. And it really, since then, we have made it like a point as often as we can to go and be around other entrepreneurs, because it's so easy to get in the groove of like the day-to-day, grow the business, do the thing, train the people. But you've got to be around other thought leaders, it's and people that are challenging the status quo, which is what we're doing as visionaries and entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I'll add a kind of experience that I had over the last, almost 6 months now. And it was actually going back into an office. Okay. I hadn't, 2020 joined the business, still in the midst of COVID. So from 2020 till summer of this year, I always worked from home. Like, I'd go into an office or something like that if we had a meeting or something else, but I worked from home. And I made a conscious shift that now I'm going to actually go into the office every day and just make that shift. But what it did is like, Coach Andy's in the office. We now have a team member that's in the office a couple days per week. Okay. And it's a shared kind of office space. So there's another business in there. So there's a few people, right? It creates this environment and energy that, while I don't always like the 45 minute commute that it takes me to get there, because there's a lot of traffic on really small roads. But getting in that environment around other people, the energy completely shifts and change. You can solve problems faster because, somebody may have some thoughts on something that you're going through that day.
Right.
And it can still be done in virtual environments, things like that. But I had forgotten just how powerful that can be. And it was really cool to see. Yeah.
People like with ADD, they call it body doubling. And even if you weren't if you're not working on something together, just being around someone else who's working or someone else who's doing, it's it's huge. Like the power of people it's incredible. And even if you go work at a coffee shop, you know, just being around people. And I think, I don't know that our culture will ever have an office. Our team right now really loves the ability to work from home. And I really do too. But there's times when you like, I'll go into a client's office and come out just so energized. Like that was so great to be working with people and to be, you know, bouncing ideas, or even just like hearing about their kids, or hearing, you know, like it's excellent. I love it.
Yep.
And it is powerful. And people at work too, I think there's like a mind shift, like a mindset shift of getting up, getting truly dressed to like go to work, not just like in your nicer jams for the day, you know? And then like, there's like the transition of driving to a place, going, you have to put your happy face on, you know, you're going to go be professional human. Like it's huge. And then the decompress time of coming home is, I think, important.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I as much as I sometimes dislike the commute side of it, it can be a great time to just let your brain mull over things, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's completely decompressing. Sometimes it's like, I had this challenge that I've been trying to solve for days, and now I just have this, you know, 30, 40 minute drive that I don't have to listen to anything. I don't have to do anything else. Just allow the brain to work. I know for me, that is huge, and I didn't create that space for it. So getting back in this environment is now kind of forced that back upon me. And it's kind of cool to see the thoughts and the plans and everything that come out, because there's actual space to think.
It's awesome. And it's like, and driving is such a mechanical thing. So you're like, it's like you're doing something with your hands. Your mind isn't, it's not blankly because you're doing something. There's a task of driving and not hitting the car in front of you and all of those things. But for me, at least, that helps with the thinking and the planning and the, you know, or the decompressing, because some of the days can be more stressful than others. And you got to, do you have children?
Yes.
So you go home to kiddos.
Yes.
So like, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. Both good and bad of like, it's, it's loud when we get home, right? But, you know, there's also the decompression piece of that of, you know, you walk in and, you know, my 6-year-old comes up and is like, has to give dad a hug. And,
which is awesome.
Yeah. You know, there's little things like that. So it's all sorts of fun being able to actually come back to that versus just like, I'm going to walk out my door now. And they're like, oh yeah, I knew dad was here.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're like, oh, hey, I saw you at lunch, like, or saw you when you went out to, you know, get some water or whatever. That's really cool. I have so much respect for business owners with children. We don't have children, but we have our nephews spend a lot of time here with us, and Briggs is actually coming over tonight for the weekend. It's his first time away from mom and dad and brother all by himself, so fun. It's going to be a thing. But it's a different level of exhaustion with those kiddos, and maybe it's different when they're your own kids, but it's the day's tiring enough as it is in the morning. Like, it's hard enough in the morning without the kids. Like, then you add a kid early, and like they wake up so early. It's like, it's wild. And then you got to go do work all day, and then come home and be dad and mom and put them to bed, and then maybe work some more after that. Like, a lot of respect. Yeah.
And I've got to give all manner of, you know, credit and respect to my wife, who you know, stays home, and really she's the one that spends the most time focusing on the kids. So I'm fortunate enough that I'm not necessarily getting them out of bed. She's doing a lot of that. She's taking them to school. She's you know, making sure that they're picked up from school and things like that, which allows me the freedom to do, you know, the pieces within the business and actually work a little bit longer and put these pieces together. So fortunately for us, that, you know, we found a dynamic that's worked pretty well. But I know that's not always the case for everyone. You got to find, you know, that blend that works. And I give all manner of credit, because I would 100% say that she's got the harder job of the two of us.
Kids are, I agree with you. Like, kids are so hard. I think it was interesting from the HR piece, and we had just started the business we'd started the business in 2018, recruiting only. And then in 2020, we were kind of forced to move into HR because no one was hiring in March of 2020. And so I'd known HR and operations for years, and so called all the clients, and we were like, hey, let us help you. You focus on keeping your lights on. We'll manage the people. And it was so wild to work with employees who were working from home and had kids were at home, both parents are working at home, maybe one kid, 5, however many kids are all at home. And the expectation that the same amount of work was going to get done during that time, we worked a lot with leaders and business owners being like, hey, you've got to give some grace here, because you can call them on the phone and it sounds like the worst place in the world. Like, you know what I mean? Just screaming children and like mom and dad are both on Zoom calls all day. Like, and the kids were supposed to be going to school. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah. It was crazy.
It was wild. It was really wild. And rightfully so. On the flip side, business owners were like, we've got to work. Like, otherwise you will have no job, you know? And I think that's the cool thing about Austin. And I'm totally stealing this from a guy named Tim Mooney, which is actually how I know Dr. Hartley, through Tim, who knows Mark Hart, who knew Dr. Hartley, and we met randomly at Topgolf. It was excellent. But anyway, Tim said, the cool thing about Austin and entrepreneurship in Austin is that when things get really hard, Google can pull out, Indeed can pull out, all these large companies can pull out, but what's left is us, is the small business entrepreneurs who we have to work with each other to keep each other's businesses going. And I just love that, because it's been I think that the way that we've worked together since COVID, and now that everything's kind of back and everyone's full steam right now, it feels like, is it's really motivating. And I think it reminded all of us, like, oh, we all need to do business together. We all need to, network and maintain the relationships that we've built over the years, and we have to support one another, whether it's as a friend, as doing business together, emotional, maybe go get happy hour, whatever. But like, it's so valuable to support the small business of Austin. I think it's beautiful. Yeah,
I mean, you look at this entire kind of metro area, and it's got to be one of the healthier kind of business climates in general, right? So I live up in Georgetown, kind of work in Leander, so I really active in like Round Rock and kind of all their communities as well, and just seeing that northern kind of Williamson County piece all the way down into Austin and Travis County, and the support that the entire community gives to small business and entrepreneurship. Like, I come from a really, really small town up in North Iowa where this was not necessarily the case. So being able to see that difference, and even just the community's involvement on different levels, and the city's involvements on different levels to continue to provide that, in conjunction with also being able to bring in these amazing large companies and things like that.
Right.
It's just, it's got to be one of the coolest things that I've ever seen.
It's really fun to be a part of. It's really fun, like, right now, and I'm in my late 30s, and so I feel like I'm kind of like in the height of my career. The business feels good. I feel like a full adult, but still like a young full adult, where it just feels like prime time to be in the environment in Austin with, like you said, the large business and the entrepreneur and everything in between. And there's so many, speaking of this, we live in this little town, or this little community called Easton Park. And what's fascinated Steve and I about this is we've been here since 2018. They're building homes. They're going to continue to build homes forever in this little community. But it is so entrepreneurial, and it's like micro. It's like this little micro economy. People that live in Easton Park, like, you really don't have to leave. There's, grocery delivery, of course, but then there's a lady down the street that's a full massage therapist. There's a couple of them. Funny story. Steve came home one day and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go get a massage from the lady down the street." And I was like, "Oh, no, you're not. That doesn't make sense to me at all." And he's like, "No, you're gonna get one after me. She's legit." And she's excellent. There's, you can get your hair. There's a woman who runs a hair salon out of her backyard. And everyone goes to her. She's wonderful. What else is there, Steve? All the things. A woman that cooks food that like delivers to your house, but it's like, she's a restaurant. It's like the best enchiladas, I understand. There's a food truck park right across the street that, like, you really don't have to leave. There's people that can come design your home. There's dog sitters. There's our cleaning people own the business that do like clean the house. You really don't have to leave. And it's on a micro scale, amazing to be a part of.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So we really like kind of that environment, and the creatives that are the entrepreneurs are very fun. So for back to your business, let's talk about working with your folks.
Sure.
How's that? How did that happen? Like, what is your dad bought the license and?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been around for a long time because he got into Action Coach back in 2011.
Okay.
So never thought that I would get into this specific business. I was in banking previously.
Okay.
So most recently, leading up into the end of 2020 when I made the transition, I was a VP at B of A.
Okay.
Working on the Merrill side, doing mortgage loans for the high net worth clients in the area, and knew that wasn't going to be like my overall career trajectory. There was kind of things I wanted to do outside of just being kind of in a corporate environment. Always thought kind of business would be fun, but never had like the ambitions of like, oh, I want to become a business coach, right?
Sure.
And 2020 hits. My dad's got his practice license, which basically meant that he was an individual coach. He could hire some kind of support staff, things like that, but really was meant to be kind of the only coach. So contrary to what we teach of building in a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you,
Right.
that really wasn't the model that was going to make that feasible. So he had this opportunity to basically trade in the license for a firm. And that was, now we can actually build a business around this. So long term, we can create something a little bit larger than just, hey, we can impact 20, 30 people at a time and be able to do a bit more. So he had that opportunity, came to me and was like, hey, he loved the coaching side of it. Was a phenomenal coach, still is a phenomenal coach.
Okay.
And he's like, I need somebody to kind of actually run the business to the other side. I'm numbers driven. I love all the other aspects. I love actually building different things. I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Let's give up this VP title at B of A and come join the family business that we're needing to basically start from almost zero, right?
Yeah.
Because COVID hit, cratered a lot of businesses. Sure. So we were kind of starting from almost zero. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it. So I took on kind of that leap primarily because I had this ambition of like, I can see where the business can go and I'd love the experience to come in and do this alongside of you.
Yeah.
So I came in as a partner. Like we actually, did this together. It was not he hired me specifically. It was, we were truly partners from day one.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the catalyst that started everything and, then continued to grow the business and do some pretty amazing things and we'll continue to do so.
Excellent.
But that was kind of the catalyst of getting into business with my parents. But like, you rewind it a bit and this isn't like new. My dad's actually written the book on family business.
Oh, really?
It's called WTF Was I Thinking? Family Business. So he just published it, I think earlier this year. So it hasn't been out a full year yet.
Okay.
But he grew up in family business. So my great-grandfather, I think it is, started a moving company. My grandfather and great-aunt were running it. My dad worked in it when he was in his, I think, early 20s. Okay. To the point where, Dad and Grandpa, I think, had some differences of opinions and things like that, and eventually leading to my dad leaving the business.
Okay.
Family business, all that sort of thing, and my dad talks about it in the books. He talks about it kind of in the stories that he tells. But fast forward a number of years, I think it was right around 2008, 2009, something like that. And my dad opened up the paper and read in the paper that my grandfather had to file bankruptcy on the business.
Oh.
So fast forward, kind of a catalyst to my dad saying, how do I make sure that this never happens to anyone else again?
Yeah.
Led to joining Action Coach and working with business owners. So
cool.
Family business has been kind of in the blood forever.
Yeah.
My grandparents on my mom's side own a real estate agency. They've had it for, 50 years, something like that.
Wow.
They're in their mid 80s and they're still working. They're still selling houses.
Cool.
So like this just like kind of family-ish environment has kind of always been a piece. So being able to then extend that on to kind of what we're doing today, all of that kind of just comes together in the full piece of the story on why and how this whole family business started together.
Very cool. I have similar, my family's always been in business and we're in business together. So my grandfather had an electrical company in San Antonio and worked until he was well into his 80s, to where we were like, stop, you have dementia. You didn't drive to work today. Where he just got old, but he loved it. And his son became an electrical engineer. My mom, his daughter, worked for the company. My other uncle his 3 children worked in the business, and I grew up, all of my cousins, we all grew up going, like, in the summer we'd go to the shop and like hang out in the warehouse and play video games. And then when we were all old enough to work, they let us work there. And it was really, really cool. And then my dad owned businesses. He ran transmission shops through a lot of his life. And like, it just always kind of made sense to do your own thing. But and then Steve, his dad ran his own practice for years and years and years too. So it's like in his blood too. So it kind of makes sense that we're doing this thing together as spouses. And it's tricky though, right? Like working with your loved ones, sometimes in a great way, but sometimes in a stressful way. But it's fun. It's an adventure. But who more do you trust? Like, who do you trust more than your spouse, your parents, your family?
Yeah. Ideally, it's all good trusting.
Sure. Yeah. In a good environment. I mean, there's always.
Yeah. You know, it's fun because we've had like the fortunate ability that not only do we see like our own experience, but we coach a lot of family businesses and a lot of husband-wife businesses and things like that, and seeing the different dynamics that come about. I joke that sometimes I think we just won the lottery in terms of like relationship between, say, like my dad and I or my mom and I in business, but primarily because we're very different. You know, Andy's a very social, outgoing person. I'm way more like, let's get into the data. Let's look at the systems and processes. Like our minds are very, very different in that way that we complement one another.
Okay.
And because we complement one another, like I can say something, and even if it's a challenge of a belief, because it's from a different perspective, you know, we can kind of come back and say, okay, I can see that. That's how this would fit here. And it starts to kind of resolve and move things, you know, forward in a really good way.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've gotten lucky, but that doesn't mean that we haven't had, you know, some pretty harsh times. I remember, you know, maybe a month and a half ago, like we had a pretty heated phone call about some different stuff to the point where, you know, it was, you know, like literally it was hanging up the phone in the mid-sentence. And it was a Friday, and, you know, what was really cool about it is like we went through that entire process because we've been through this iteration and like pretty practiced at having hard conversations. It was like, that was done, got over it. And, you know, Saturday was the next day. It's like, well, kids are coming over, we're going to hang out, back to family time. We're all good. Yeah.
That's a skill.
Yeah. It takes that time to kind of go through and have some difficult conversations. Yeah. Oftentimes more than once.
Yeah. And and they will continue to happen.
Yes.
And your mom and dad, so your mom works in the business too. So
she does.
That is such an interesting dynamic. Like, and what does your mom do for the business?
So she is the CEO.
Okay.
And she primarily focuses a lot on our strategic partners and kind of being out in the community and things like that.
Awesome.
And then she's a nonprofit expert. So she spends a lot of time focused on how can we also work with nonprofits and continue to grow that. So a little bit of history for her. She's like, you'd probably call her a turnaround expert. And most of her turnarounds had been within nonprofits. So most recently, before she joined the business, and what actually brought us down to Texas originally back in 2018 is she was the CEO of the United Way for Williamson County.
Okay.
And she took that organization into kind of the next phase and then actually led the merge between Williamson County and Austin's United Ways.
Awesome.
Literally merged herself out of a job because it was what was best for the organization, which then led her, you know, she opened up and we were able to bring her into the business. But she had been doing that. She did that with the United Way up in Mason City, Iowa, the North Iowa Way, United Way. She was with the Downtown Association, I think, prior to that. So a number of different things that she's been a part of, like nonprofit is in her blood. She loves it. So being able to take what she's learned from that and then kind of apply it with some of the business things that we teach and go through and have an even bigger impact on a lot of the nonprofits here in the area, which is just super cool to see.
That's awesome. Who does she work with?
She's worked with a couple different organizations. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say them all. So
fair enough.
But there's one notable kind of very notable one in the area that she's currently working with.
Excellent.
And then she's doing some coaching with another one. I think there's 2 or 3 that we're currently working with.
It's a whole nother beast, the nonprofit. situation.
It is. And, a lot of times it's because when we get into the nonprofit space, or someone gets into nonprofit space, it's not always looked at the same way as a business is.
Right.
But the structure ultimately is the same. It's just like, we may need to get funding from grants versus like I go out and sell something. But it's still here's how many dollars I need to get, which means I need this many grants, which means I need to write this many grant proposals. And you can still walk it back just like you would anything else. Okay. And that funds the operations of the business. So there's a lot of similarities. Things tweak and shift a little bit just based on kind of the structure of the nonprofit.
Sure.
But that tends to be the cases like, most of us in general, we're not trained in how to do business in general anyway.
Right.
And then, you look at most nonprofit leaders, and I say this as a nonprofit leader in the past.
Okay.
I worked for a chamber of commerce. I was the executive director for a downtown association.
Oh, cool.
Like I've been in the nonprofit space before I kind of knew all this business stuff. And I will 100% say it from my own personal experience that didn't look at it the same way. But had I known the stuff I know today, I know I could have had such a greater impact in each of those organizations.
Very cool. And it's not looked at the same. Like I remember a buddy of ours was really into solar, and he wanted to start a solar, we were going to call it Sundogs. And I don't remember what we're going to do is like nonprofit for, I can't remember exactly what the cause was. He had it all figured out and he was very passionate about it. We're like, it's a nonprofit. How hard could it be? And we had our group. There's 4 or 5 of us working on it. And after like the second or third meeting, we were like, none of us have time for this. This is like, it's a whole nother job. Like, it's not, it's just a nonprofit. Like it's a whole thing. And we quickly were like, this is too much because it's running a business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It is.
It's wild. So who are you? I'm just trying to think about how to ask this. Who all do you work with? Like, what's an ideal client for you? And is the ideal client for you different than the ideal client for like your dad?
I would say there's an ideal client for the firm overall.
Okay.
Really and truly, I actually don't do a ton of coaching personally. Okay. I'll do a little bit, and more from stage and kind of working through our planning stuff. I spend vast majority of my time doing marketing, sales, operations, finance side of it. Like, how do we build out our team? What's the next scale for growth? All of that kind of stuff. Like, that's my forte.
Okay.
So some of that will lead into some coaching, which is why I've got a couple clients, but Andy takes on most of it, and then we'll have some additional coaches. So I look at it more from a firm base, kind of what's ideal for us, or who's a really good fit to benefit from kind of the services that we provide. That's probably a better way to look at it.
Yeah.
And bread and butter is really that business that's probably doing on the low end $500,000-600K a year up to maybe the $5-6 million.
Okay.
Traditionally, what it means is there's some profit coming off the business, and they've got some team members. It's not just the individual person that hasn't grown into having a couple team members yet.
Sure.
That tends to be the best fit, and we find that not that we can't work with people that are below that or above that, but we find that tends to be the sweet spot where there's a long enough period of time in business that there's a level of maturity. There's gone through kind of some of these initial stages that I'm ready for this next piece, or I've gotten to this point where I'm frustrated. Like I'm putting all this time into the business and I'm not seeing the rewards that I want. Like I know that the business can make more money and it's not, right? I'm not taking home what I thought I should be.
Right.
Like I'm stuck at this level, or I'm working 60, 70 hours and I'm not developing hobbies and things like that outside of the business. I'm not spending time with my friends.
Right.
Or we get into the team side of things. Like I don't know how to recruit and hire. I don't know these things that I need to do to be able to retain my team members.
Right.
And I'm ready for that next level that allows me to have the freedom. The real reason I got into business, like that really is where we tend to fit the best.
Okay.
That being said, you can find the business owners that have kind of that maturity level that are really, really early on.
Yeah.
And they're super fun to work with. And on the other side of the spectrum, Andy's an executive coach.
Okay.
He's a certified corporate coach as well.
Okay.
So we've got a few clients that are way on the other end of the spectrum. You know, we're talking 30, 40, $50 million companies and above.
Yeah.
I think our largest has been about $500 million.
Wow.
It's kind of been the largest company we've worked with, but it's executive leadership at that point.
Sure.
It's a very different style of
Right.
coaching. So all across the spectrum, I'd say kind of that middle area is where we tend to really excel. It's what the Action Coach model had been originally built upon.
Okay.
What we aren't that great at, and I'm so fortunate that we're in a city that has so many resources like those that are in that very early startup phase, that are just starting their company, maybe pre-revenue, kind of working through some ideas, things like that. That's traditionally not a great fit for what we do.
Right.
Which is why it's fantastic to be in this area, because there's so many great accelerators and different programs that fit that phenomenally.
Yeah. I mean, you're basking in it basically in this area. It's awesome. If people wanted to work with you, how do they find you? How do they reach out?
Website's going to be the easiest way.
Okay.
So actioncoachcentraltx.com is going to be the website that's probably the easiest way to kind of find a little bit more information. There's I think it's start your journey or something like that. It's basically the contact us button at the very top.
Okay.
All of our emails and such are listed there. You can reach out to us directly. Otherwise, any of my social profiles, reaching out, direct message, things like that. I'm pretty responsive on things. But if there's anyone that's interested in that wants to just have that conversation, we never make the assumption that anyone needs what we do.
Sure.
And the thing is, we don't traditionally go through just a, hey, let's have a quick little consultation and then it's a sales meeting and do you need to buy from us or not?
Sure.
We're going to walk you through what it feels like, because coaching, such a kind of amorphous term. It's hard to explain exactly what it is we do. We prefer to show you and kind of work through your business specifically. So we kind of go through really 2 weeks of free coaching. And there's kind of multiple different components that end in really a 90-minute to 2-hour, let's sit down together, work through some of your numbers, some additional strategies, some really core things that you want to spend time on. If you have a marketing challenge, let's talk through that. If you have a team challenge, just talk through that, right?
Yeah. And
through that process allows us to really see what would coaching look like, if it even makes sense.
Sure.
And then folks can make a decision if that's the right path for them or not.
Have you all made a decision before where you get through those 2 weeks and you're like, I don't think that we're the best fit for you, or perhaps because it's kind of an interview on your side as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Number of times, there's, I can recall some really vivid times when it was very clear we were not a good fit.
Sure.
Not in a great way, but I mean, the whole process is meant to be like, we have to like each other, right?
Right.
There's going to be work and there's going to be pain. And, if you're going to grow a business, if you're in, the seat of an entrepreneur right now, more than likely you already know that there's going to be times of pain and frustration and how do I just get out of this pain for a bit?
Right.
And that's going to happen because we're going to push for growth. So there's got to be a true connection that's going to fit as we go through it.
Right.
And there's been times when it's like, I understand that you want to move forward with this. You're just not ready yet.
Sure.
Here's a few things that we're going to recommend. And sometimes it's here's a way that you can get started with us today that's not coaching. Come to one of our 90-day planning programs. Just build your 90-day plan. We'll give you some guidance on it. Go do that for 90 days. Build up to this next phase. Go through those learnings. And then let's talk about it.
Yeah.
We're never going to sit here and try and cash trap a business. We're going to say, hey, you fit. We'd love to have you in one-to-one coaching, even though that takes up your entire profit. It's like that just doesn't make sense, right?
Well, there's no success for either of you there, right?
Exactly.
Eventually, there's no more money.
Yeah, I'm always a proponent of whether it's coaching, consulting, anything out there, right? If you're going to make an investment into something, there needs to be a return. And if there's not a return, then you got to do something different. And I'm the first one to tell people, why should I hire you? Or if I chose to work with you, then what? It's like, well, if we don't get results together, fire us. We shouldn't be working together then. That's okay. But I'll be the first to tell them that. Yeah.
Yeah. Y'all, there's a level of trust. And so from the HR standpoint, we're going in and from an outside perspective, taking over the highest, the most expensive line item on their budget, which is their people, and then their benefits. That's typically 1 and 2. And there's a level of trust both ways that has to happen or it won't work. And there's been people that we've been really lucky so far that we haven't had to turn business away, but we've had a couple things come up where you're like, there's just a gut feeling sometimes too that but the level of trust and the time it takes to build that trust is so important. And some people build very quickly, especially if it's like a warm lead or you know them and they're at a point of growth. But with people that we're at this point now in the marketing where we're getting people that we don't know at all. They're just cold. And that it's been a bit of a learning curve because it was so easy when you know them, they're like, oh yeah, I've worked with Nicole, or I know old Steve worked with Nicole years ago and she's, they're great, whatever. But like it takes time to warm up, and HR, by very much like you guys, something's happened, right? They want to grow, they're frustrated, or very rarely they're probably like, all right, I hit this phase, now it's time to get a coach. I'm sure that happens. For us, it's never like our HR is going excellent, we need to bring in a consultant. Something bad has happened, and so we're coming into business owners that are in pain, like a lot of pain. Sometimes they're like, I can't, embarrassed. I can't believe we let this happen. And our kind of function that we go in, and we've learned this from mistakes, is we do, and it's called an integrity check, an HR integrity check, because when we did not do those, we found ourselves in situations that we're now in a contract and now we're at a lot of risk.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, first step, and that's kind of our, like, here's how we work, here's how we present. Let's make sure that we feel good about this. And we had one integrity check where they didn't like what we found, and they didn't like, I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's just the fact, and they chose not to work with us. And we were kind of like, probably better. 'Cause if it was this hard in the beginning, when things get really hard, like, we've got to be aligned. And so I would imagine with you all, it's the same of like that 2 weeks is building this kind of like repository of trust that you can go back on and that you can bank on, that will be there.
Yeah.
Cause it's, that's real personal stuff.
Yeah. And it's, because of that, it's, the first kind of like 6 weeks of coaching, when somebody chooses, yes, fully in, let's move forward with a coaching program, week one, or I think week two, first week is kind of positioning what to expect, things like that. So the first kind of like real, let's get into it kind of week is alignment. Sure. And that is, really us getting into, what do you want out of the business? Like, are like you and your business partners, or you and your spouse, are y'all aligned? Are we aligned with helping you get there? Because if none of that happens, doesn't matter all the other stuff that we can go do. Like, we're not going to be able to build a plan that's going to achieve what you want if we don't talk about what that looks like, which really is where there's a lot of trust built, and kind of we go through some really specific stuff more on a personal level on, we all get into business for a reason. Sometimes to make money, sometimes to have the freedom, sometimes it's, I want to have this lifestyle at the end. It's not just the business itself.
Right.
So how do we align these things that we can work on together to help you achieve the life that you actually desire through this vehicle that is business?
Right. That makes the profit and the financial situation for you to live the life that you want, which has got to be so fascinating for you all, because that's so different for everybody. Like, success is so different for so many people. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's always a fun topic to get into when we talk to prospects or clients or anyone else that we're having this conversation with, because usually, whatever success is defined as, we always talk about the three main frustrations within business. It's going to be money, time, and team, right? Which I kind of alluded to earlier. And whatever success looks like, traditionally, it still comes down to, we need these two resources. We need money, we need time. Mm-hmm. So the business itself still has to go make a lot of money, and it's got to use that money to buy back your time so that you can go do the things that you want. So whether you're a money-driven person or not, some people are, some people aren't. But success for you might be driven by the level of relationships that I have, or the experiences I get to have with loved ones or by myself, right? How does the business making more money and giving you more time, how does that feed into your definition of success? So it's really cool. Like, when you peel it all back, like, the formula is still primarily the same. It's just what is the output, and what can you do with the resources that you're ultimately entrusted with?
Yeah, that's awesome. It's very exciting stuff.
Oh yeah, I love the topic.
Yeah, I can tell. You should. Of all the people that should love it, it should be you. I think that's awesome, and I'm sure that I know that Dr. Hartley did very much the same thing, and that's my experience with Action Coach is by proxy to Mark Hart. And I remember when he got into just working with Dr. Hartley, he was so jazzed. Because we co-opt with the company that I worked for, we were co-op in the same office, so we'd see Mark and Dr. Hartley kicking it in the conference room is a glass bowl, and then the beginning of it was excellent, and then it got hard, and I remember him just being like, I had no idea like how hard this was going to be and how vulnerable he felt and it's hard.
It is, but the rewards can be so amazing.
Yeah.
I'll share real quick, just because it's top of mind. It's something that just is game changer, life changing for folks. And we teach all this stuff. And we go through like here's what your increase in profit could be and all that kind of stuff. And we throw some crazy things. Here's what 100% increase in these different areas could look like. Just the big scope of things.
Yeah.
And then you see real life stuff happen. And there's been two things that like popped up in the last 2 months. They've been pretty cool. One, a newer client that's newer to business, working through things, literally talking about how, she went from negative $200 in her bank account to over $8,000 in her account in 30 days.
Whoa.
Like,
that's huge.
Game changing, right?
That's huge. Yeah.
And then, on the other end of the spectrum, we've got a client that we've been working with for a long time. A great client, had to work through a couple different things. I think they did like $47,000 in profit all of last year. We get to October this year, and they send over financials, take a look at stuff, and the only focus for coaching this year has been increase of profit.
Okay.
We did all this other stuff. Now we're heavily focused on profitability. So he and Coach Andy had gone through all of this stuff for a while. They went from $47,000 all of last year.
Okay.
They were over $500,000 in profit.
Coach Andy, October. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you're just like, wow.
Yeah, it works.
That's insane. That's not everybody's results in that short of time period.
Sure.
You see like what the power of this stuff does, and the point being, how does that impact your life? How does that change everything for that individual? Because that's a family business that now changes. What's the value of the business? Like, how does that look for the kids that are in the business? If they look at an exit, what does that look like now?
Right.
Like, complete game changer for that family because of things that they actually focused on. They went through the hard stuff.
Yeah.
So they could see and reap the rewards of what's possible.
That is so awesome. And then there's everything in between, right? Like
yes.
All the other, like the more average of, which is still incredible. And not only is it impacting what y'all are doing, it's not only impacting the business owner, and I know that's the focus, but the trickle down of that is the employees that work for, and that's where my mind goes is like, that increase of $500,000 or what have you, that's significantly better health benefits. That's maybe more PTO. That's a happier leadership team. That there's so much that impacts that probably it will help to the additional profit because you have happier people.
So this is a fundamental belief that I have, and I've seen it with some stuff that we're working on doing internally with our team members, but I'm taking it directly from, so we've got a coach that coaches us, like full disclosure.
Okay.
We are such a firm believer in what we do that we ought to have a coach too.
Sure.
And, this is a gentleman that was an Action Coach, left Action Coach, sold out of his firm, went and bought a business, grew it, went from, I think he bought it for, I think his cash was like $30,000-$40,000 of worth of being able to buy the business. It's now a $400 million business using a lot of the frameworks that we do. But where I'm going with this, because a fundamental belief that I have is, like you call it legacy, whatever you want, but our transference of knowledge is probably one of the best gifts that we can give anybody. And the way I think about it is, if I've got team members, how do I impart additional knowledge on them so they can continue to be as successful as possible, whether it's within this organization or not? So, our coach, he's got his company, and they've actually put in different workshops and things like that they teach their employees about how to create wealth. And like, here's this process. Like, how do you be as successful as you can in your role and take the additional cash that you're getting from bonuses and everything else because you're doing phenomenal and go invest it into real estate and like do these different things so you can have an amazing life. Yes. Even as an employee, and that's just a trickle down of knowledge from what he's learned over the years. So the same thing. I think of like, how do I take our team members, and one of them's got a business that she's working to build. So like, how do we provide this coaching to help her continue to grow and learn these same types of things that can change her life outside of just the stuff that she does with us. So that impact, like long term, is so much more than just the business or just the business owner, but there's so much ability then to give back. It goes back to the allocation of resource, right? We've got money, we've got time, we've got ideas or knowledge. Yeah. How do we allocate those resources for the best overall impact of those that are around us, that team, business overall, community, family, and be able to just lift everybody up because you're working through it.
It's almost it's like contagious almost when you're very excited about something like that, and to be able to provide employees and when again, I always go back to the HR, but you think about retention plans, like you're at a company that is helping you build wealth outside of just the income they're making at that company. That's a huge investment on both sides. That person's never going anywhere. No. That's a soft benefit outside of the medical, dental, vision, 401k, all the normal stuff that is what, at least a lot of the people that we work with are like, what can we do to be sticky? We have a great team, and it's that like that additional soft, you don't really think about it. And it's like showing an investment into the employees, and it was truly an investment into themselves. And I think too, just leaders and entrepreneurs in general can't help but just spew the things that we're very excited, like the visions that come out into our minds, which is why I think it makes it hard to work with us as entrepreneurs. But that's like, fair. is that, it's like, it's so exciting and it's so contagious, but in the best way. And that's awesome. I love that. So exciting. Outside of work, which we've talked about a lot and you're very passionate about, you do podcasting yourself, you do interviews, like walk me through that.
Yeah. So started with the interview that you were on, Business Spotlight series, something that we within Action Coach are, there's a lot of other firms that also do this. We just happen to get pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But highlighting entrepreneurs and business owners and such in the area, kind of short, call them 30-minute little chats, kind of walking through some different challenges, things like that within business, which I'm super excited about. Like I've got 2 team members that actually do this now. Awesome. You and I were on it together, and now I don't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
So kind of seeing that progression of it. So yeah, they do a lot of that piece, and then usually at least once a week we've got some content that we try to push out, both on YouTube and then on podcast. That's really just some conversations around business. So usually myself and Kay Cote, who's on our team, we'll sit down, we'll talk through a topic. We talked about like, how do you know when you're ready to hire for that next person, or how do I build a plan that's actually actionable? It's not just pie in the sky, I think it's going to work because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, no. How do you bring this down into real numbers? And like, we actually walk through some of that process. So ideally there's some takeaways and things like that. So
cool.
Just focus on like, what are things that are valuable and takeaway for really the business community overall, so we can continue to grow and learn. And I'm a huge fan of just podcasts in general. Like I'll throw them on. So it's like my medium that I enjoy.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of create some stuff in that space has always been kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's creative. It's fun. It's like when we're up here doing this, it's all I can think about, which is like, it's a good, like, release the mind. It's really fun. I can kick it all day. This is my favorite thing to do, is just like talk to people and hear their stories. It's really refreshing. And Steve and I have found that it's just such an excellent way to build trust and to get to know people on a one-to-one level. We've, and this is all Steve's brainchild, by the way. I just happen to be the one in front of the camera, because I like talking to people. But, we've tried to start networking groups here in Easton Park, which is, again, a very entrepreneurial community, very professional community. Affluent people in their mid to late 30s with young families. And, we felt like we were always just like begging people to come to these events, like, oh, please come. And then you get 2 or 3 good ones. And then, people on Thursday night at 6:30 are like, I'd rather not, and totally understandable. We've been on the other side of that too. And so Steve had done audio video before he jumped in full time with our company. I mean, he's always worked on both. Like, make no mistake, Steve has always been behind the scenes of Moss Consulting. But when he joined full time, like, this is his passion, is lights and cameras and action and the whole nine. And so we started doing these interviews to help promote businesses within Easton Park. And it just became so much fun. And it's like, what a great way to get to know somebody. You sit here for an hour and a half, 2 hours. We've had some last 4 or 5 hours on the weekends. Some of those, maybe we had some cocktails during it. And but it's very fun. And it's like you'll never, the relationship changes when you talk to someone like this for a long time. And so when we see you again, when we know you much more deeply now, and the people that we've interviewed, you'll never not see them and be like, oh, hey, we shared something together, which is so cool. And for us, for networking, it's such a great way to make an introduction, even if we don't know you, or and just get to know kind of the motivation and the joy and what drives you. And I love it. So I said at the beginning, I owe you something. And I don't know if you remember because it was a long time ago, but you asked me, and I don't even know if I'm ready to answer it now, but I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you in the same seat, is I was unable to answer the question, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And you caught me off guard with it back then. And I was like, can I put that in the back of my mind and we think about it and I'll tell you later? And you're like, absolutely. And we moved on. So I'm going to ask you for the best piece of advice you've ever been given.
Ooh, it's a tough question, I think, primarily because I think there's been really good pieces of advice depending on the season of either business or life that I'm in. Yeah. Right now, the thing that comes to mind based on the season that we've been over probably the last 12 months is really understand the numbers of your business. And I've gone full-fledged into that and have seen a massive change in everything that we do business-wise and everything we've done with clients because we've gotten deeper on truly understanding the language that is business, which is the numbers. So right now for the season we're in, that's probably the best piece of advice that I've been given. But man, there's been a lot over the last couple of years that has been some pretty dang good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's excellent. I think I'm trying to, because I owe this to you from years now. And I think you're right that it's like kind of the season in which you're in. And this is kind of I'm not trying to be flattering to Steve here, and this is, but he's recently been saying, you need to make decisions. You're going to think about those decisions in traffic for the rest of your life. So make sure that it's a decision that you're okay sitting in traffic thinking about for the rest of your life. And I that's hit home on personal and business and so many things of, we've got one shot to make a decision. We've got one shot to take an action, but for the rest of your life, you're going to think about it in traffic. So I think that just being intentional about movement is really important in the kind of the way you handle things.
I like that. That is really cool.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. Well, Tanner, is there anything else that you want to chat about today? Do you have any other topics or anything on your mind?
Nothing specifically. I mean, I could sit here for days talking business stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, this has been a lot of fun, just being able to go through, talk about a few things, catch up, after, a while and all that kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
Nothing like right on the top of my head,
that
I feel like we need to cover.
Let's just, for the end of it, let's just say, can you plug your dad's book again? And then let us know where we can find you and sign up to chat with you about Action Coach.
Yeah. So book, WTF Was I Thinking? Family Business. I think it can be found on Amazon if you just type it in. Otherwise, if you go to our website, actioncoachcentraltx.com, just scroll down right on the front page. We got a place there to grab it as well and learn more about it, that sort of thing. But website's going to be probably the fastest way to get a hold of us at the firm, because then if you can't get a hold of me right away, there's either the other coaches or Taylor on our team, who's our admin, absolutely phenomenal. You reach out to anything with her, she will take care of you.
Awesome.
But that's probably the best way. We've got a couple opt-in forms, things like that. So, if you're interested in something, that's probably the place to go. Otherwise, you can find me on all the socials. Primarily LinkedIn's probably my biggest one.
Sure.
If you search Tanner O'Brien on LinkedIn, I'm probably the first one that pops up. Instagram, Tanner O'Brien 001. Facebook be the same thing. Those tend to be the big ones.
Okay.
And then our Action Coach Central Texas YouTube page is another great kind of resource to check things out.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.